listeners, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Between Two Worlds. I am your host, Annika, and on this week, well, I originally was going to do a huge topic on working with deity. However, as things go, I was called to talk about another topic, and that is death. There has, not only been one, but a few prominent deaths in my family over the past 3 months. But death is something that we are faced with on a daily basis. And especially as the year comes to a close and winter begins, death is at our door with more faces than one. And as a witch, it is vital to have a relationship with death, preferably a healthy one. As we all face death within our own lives, whether it be the physical challenge of it or mental, spiritual, I believe it is crucial to understand that death is not an end, but it is change. It's a transformation. And if you read tarot cards, this might be a familiar concept to you. You know, everyone freaks out when they get the death card because we are just conditioned to see it as negative. But if you are a seasoned reader, you see the living skeleton riding his steed as the only thing that is left after the human body dies. It's bones. This Death Rider wears armor, suggesting that death cannot be destroyed, while the horse is white, that can suggest purity, and the humans depicted of all classes and ages, all of them see death, since death does not pick and choose who it takes. Death comes for us all, whether we can be ready for it, we can try to understand it, even if we never know, every single in and out of it. We can choose to not let the fear of coming to an end disturb our spiritual bodies. Balance is a cornerstone of magic and witchcraft as a whole. The strive for balance lies within multiple spiritual traditions, however it is labeled, but there's really just one big thing about death, right? It's significant in each. It's the symbol of transformation and renewal. Where there's death, there's always rebirth. We see it every day in the physical world. When a plant dies, another grows. It decays, it feeds the forest, and a new life begins. We are just a part of that cycle. One thing I definitely want to make clear throughout this entire episode is not to shun grief away. Even as we turn the coin, we can accept death with peace. Grieving and shifting with the tides of a broken heart caused by death is just as important and empowering for the process. So, first, I want to talk about physical death and recognizing mortality. This can be a daunting thing, borderline invoking an existential crisis, and for some, it takes a really long time to reach a comfortable spot with this. For me, when I was young, I was extremely scared of death. This definitely cannot be further from the truth now, since it is, it's something that I definitely began working on through probably the beginning of my practice. This was the main challenge I wanted to first kind of conquer. I have always been connected to these things that have already died, which is very ironic, but even as I accepted my little animal bones with all their spirits and, you know, I could see even just roadkill from a mile away, communicating with entities, seeing them, spirits, past human spirits, all of the above. I distinctly remember being just terrified of dying myself. It was just the unknown. And as a child with my own personal religious trauma, this is something that I was already dwelling on. I would think and think and think about where I was going to go, afraid of being tortured in hell. And on the other hand, you know, I was told this idea of heaven was just so amazing, everything was perfect. And quite honestly, that scared me too. The fact that I was told, oh, I would have no mom, no dad, no siblings, no relationships. It's just one big open space of happy enlightenment for eternity. There was no moving forward. That's exactly what I was afraid of. And I wanted to be able to be myself and who I was in this heaven. And, I just was told that was just not possible. So between, being scared of hell and being scared of heaven, scared of what else could happen to me, and just the pure thought of being in pain from dying, I couldn't fathom it until I was just tired of being scared. And that is where my turning point kind of began is I was just tired of that feeling. As I moved through my practice and craft, this was definitely a huge beast to tackle in the beginning. I didn't want to be afraid of my own death, and so I began to work on it. And additionally, on another personal note, as I aged and, around 16, 15, 16, I really started to take on to motorcycles. And that's something that I really fell in love with, aside from all this, the podcast, witchcraft, that's another part of my life that I really hold dearly. So before I even got a car, I became obsessed with street bikes and super sports and watching racing and all the legends. I worked really, really hard and I purchased my first motorcycle at 17 and I've been riding ever since with big periods of my life where it really was all I had for transportation. And I even wanted to pursue it professionally, so it wasn't just something that was transport. It was something I was in love with. So, facing death was something I had to do every single day. And putting yourself, it's just like when you get in the car, we all know everything can happen. Obviously, it's a little bit more in your face when you're riding a motorcycle, but that's something that every single person who rides, we just accept it. Every time I started that engine and rode off, as a rider, you accept death automatically. That moment that you swing your leg over. So between having close calls, a crash even, and experiencing friends meeting death while riding also was just a huge, it was this cold shower to remind you of your own mortality. So in that sense, I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but in that sense, it was this thing where I had to become very comfortable with the idea that I could meet death every single day that I rode. And I did ride every single day for, years. So on a physical means, it was something that I had to look straight in the face. We know that death is inevitable. Every time it's in your face, we see roadkill, a bug hits your window while driving, a leaf falls from a tree, it's present. And moving past the fear of something so unstoppable becomes really quite easy once you hit your own personal break. And there will be a moment of almost inspiration that makes it all click to build the bridge between your magic and physical death. There are, well, lots of things you can do. You can build a morning altar, or even tie in some practices from the Victorian era. The Victorian era is definitely one I would not want to experience for many reasons, but one thing I appreciate is that the morning rituals are long, they're complex, unmistakable. They focus so heavily on not only remembering death each day, but during these morning periods, you know, there was rituals, there was daily rituals. They would only wear black for the morning periods. Clocks would be stopped at the time of death of the loved one. Veils would be placed over each mirror in the home to prevent the spirit from getting stuck, and open caskets would stay in the home. While modern medicine has come in now, and we don't keep open caskets in our home for weeks on end, we can still use what best fits within our lives to aid our grieving, allowing the grief to exist. Remember the stories, the memories, the tears, the anger, the bad dreams and sleepless nights, all these things that come with loss in our personal lives. This is all a part of magic, allowing our bodies and our minds to ebb and flow as the rest of nature does. Recognize it that this is something that's real. The part of letting yourself become sad and move past it and remember something that was, and not pushing through and white knuckling past the parts we don't like. We can never look back and recognize the moment that helped us grow if we all we were doing was just fighting through it or denying it. We come to kind of this zen place, after these hard trials in life, and we look back and we can recognize how it helped us. So magic as a whole is a dance between the balance of life and death through energy work. This is all a part of it. So, other than just physical deaths that may come into our lives, well, will come into our lives, many of us will experience multiple metaphysical deaths. This is a journey I personally welcome because I know the outcome is always so worth the sometimes very tower moments that we have to navigate through. I personally have found the one thing most recurring while practicing witchcraft is that the moment that we submit and we flow with the cycle of our lives, the easier it is. I think of it like fighting against the tide of the ocean. You can swim and swim against the current, sometimes making progress, but by the end, the waves just leave you where it would have from the beginning. I've done both. I know everyone is different. We all have different thresholds. But as I went through extremely difficult times in my life and did nothing but wanted it to stop, trying both physical means, magical means, nothing made it worse than me torturing myself mentally, wanting whatever it was that was going on just to stop. If something's going to happen, why put yourself through it twice by stressing? I know that's a lot easier said than done, but it was going to happen regardless. And that is what I accepted in my own journey was if it was meant to be, it will be. And as that may seem contradictory, because, as witches, we really aim to manipulate energy and change an outcome to our liking. I have always been the type to work alongside what will be and not against it. There really is a way to do magic within the margins of what is meant to be. I've never desired to change the lessons that are meant to be learned. Personally, as a witch, that seems like doing a huge disservice to myself and the ultimate growth of my magical potential and me as a whole. So the trials in life are difficult to experience, no doubt, but they are transitions and they are rebirths and they are crucial moments for everyone, witch or not. Now, as a magical practitioner, we can read between the lines, right? Sometimes we may be able to gather just enough signs early enough to interpret, or even get a little help from friends on the other side through divination, or just a little peek out, what we are to learn as we are hitting these more challenging parts of our lives. So we can be prepared and walk through those difficult doors more confidently. These little deaths are symbolic changes in witchcraft. All these major life transitions, identity changes, they hurt. They're all difficult, but growing is not easy. The right amount of tenacity, we can prevent them from seeping into our shadow and work through them as they come to us instead of we're faced with this challenge and sometimes we really just want to bypass all of it and that's not fucking good at all because at the end of the day if we just want to bypass everything it's going to leak into our shadow and it's going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and later down the line that becomes a larger problem than just facing it as you're hit with it. So besides that, this, I think, segues into spiritual deaths. And while metaphysical deaths and spiritual deaths are very similar, it is a bit different. These emotional, mental, or just plain little deaths in lives. The spiritual death is more like a shedding instead of an end and then a new beginning, this kind of rebirth. I think of it as a way a snake grows. It's a transition. We may grow too big for our current skin and need to shed it. We change, our colors become brighter, more defined. We evolve. Our beliefs evolve, and that is a really good thing. To stay in one spot, especially as a witch, and choose to see the same four walls of your life is a really quick way to stay stuck and eventually powerless. We have to let go of limiting beliefs and sometimes identities as we choose different paths. Things that do not serve us in the current are doomed to be let go of, and that is okay. And that's kind of where witches love to thrive, right? Especially with this huge new moon right now. Um, we can get really, really good at letting go. And that's what death is about. It's a transition. And what is to come to us, we can't accept something when our cup is already full. So we have to recognize, we have to look back at the things that are not serving us anymore and we have to shed them. We have to snip that cord, and that may be very, very scary for a lot of people. And they think, oh, I'm going to lose my relationship. I might lose my job. I'm going to lose this or that. And well, maybe you will. Maybe you will. And that can be scary, but the thing that's even scarier is staying comfortable when you're not really comfortable to begin with, because change doesn't happen if it's not meant to happen. You know, there's not this initiated moving from one place to another place if where you once were is serving you in your best interest. So there are a lot of different things that we can do here. We can work with the phases of the moon You can burn old symbols when you're doing fire rituals. You can create your own sigils, burn them, bury them, you name it, whatever works for you. You can meditate and release these attachments in the non-physical world, and most importantly, work through your shadow. And I know that's kind of a hot topic right now, or was. It's a hot word no matter what. Working through your shadow. What is the shadow? Um, we will get there eventually. So that is kind of a bigger thing, but it absolutely coincides with deaths. There are a lot of things we can utilize. So, symbolic magic, really anything in symbolic magic you can take advantage of. We have all this room, this empty space for new perspectives right after we let go. And it allows for connections to deeper truths. This process brings on profound personal evolution and spiritual growth. So, by the end of it, we all realize, wow, that really fucking sucked what I went through, but I wouldn't be where I am right now if it didn't happen. So, absolutely do your due diligence. And once the death in your life is ready to be let go, you gotta just let that shit go. I also kind of want to touch on deaths for the witch and the psychopomp specifically. So, as magical people, we are often the first line of defense for spirits. And maybe that's not really the right words to use, but we're easy to see. We're easy to communicate with, and more than often we're willing to. I think it's really fucking awesome, but some disagree. There are witches who do not work with death in any capacity whatsoever, and that's okay. However, often depicted in media as death workers, communicators, and generally offering support in transitions for spirits, which is really not far from the truth for most witches today. A lot of magical people who are called to this kind of psychopomp work physically choose or are called to many different types of work in their career in the physical world, like working in hospice and medicine, grief support, while using spiritual tools also to provide comfort for many individuals on the living side. And right now, you might be wondering what the fuck is a psychopomp? Or not, but to put it shortly, psychopomp work can be described as guiding souls or spirits. And if you're someone who works with Hecate, this might be a familiar word to you. This kind of magic takes a long time. This work, right? No, it's magic and it's work, it takes commitment no matter what. And not everyone is equipped with the magical and the mental endurance to continue it to a full scale. You may kind of dabble in it, but at the end of the day, if you are a psychopomp, it's something you commit yourself to. Maybe this is something I can touch on eventually, but for today, I just want to mention something more tangible when you are especially trying to navigate through the death process yourself. And that is just working with psychopomp deities or psychopomp energies to comfort and kind of assist you as you're working through these deaths. So there are a few like Hel, Anubis, and of course Hecate, who I kind of want to talk about most here because I have experience with Hecate. I work with her. I do not consider myself a devotee since I do not worship Hecate, but like every relationship, I make an effort to keep the door open between us. Hecate as a psychopomp is extremely important. Besides the many, many talents of this deity, there is one where she may show up um, the most, really, even if you do not have a previous relationship with her. And this is kind of what happened with me. And my first encounter with Hecate was absolutely during a time of death and transition. And it was a very hard one for me, especially. Talking about my past religious trauma, working with deity, or even the idea of worshiping a deity, it was not something I wanted to do at all, which I think makes this connection kind of more special to me because it really was a gradual, like, hey, I see you, I'm here for support. And she didn't really ask for anything. And that really showed me the ways now today how I can work with her. But yeah, so 3 years back, I had this dog. He was absolutely my soul dog, and unfortunately ended up getting cancer, and he passed away very, very young. Well, very, very, he was 6 years old, but still. It was kind of like got sick and then rapid decline. So everything hit me within, 3, 4 months. So it was a huge transition. It was a huge death moment within my life. And I made the choice to put him to forever sleep. And as I sat in the room alone with him and the vet, he, just had his head up in my lap and was just looking up at me as she administered the medicine. I obviously was crying and, looking back down at him until I closed my eyes. And I saw Hecate. She showed herself to me within, my mind's eye in that space. I saw her dogs, and they led my dog Titus to her. She was holding her torch, and it really was this moment of she showed me that she was going to guide him where he needed to be. And this overwhelming sense of comfort just enshrouded me. I was no longer crying. It was just kind of a sigh of relief moment. It was truly unbelievable because at that point, I have experienced much as a witch, spirits, signs, you name it, um, visions from the other world, astral realm, and I just entrusted her at that moment with my baby. And it truly made everything feel so validated. Like I didn't need to worry about where he was or who he was with. And that was a powerful moment for me during a huge turning point in my life. Without hesitation, Hecate was just more than willing. Her dominion includes the restless dead and her guardianship of it. This can be profound addition to any grief or funeral rite for a witch to work with. If you are open to working with deities, I strongly suggest this is something that you can reach out to Hecate for, and I can guarantee she will show up for it. Um, it really just deepened my understanding to mortality and comfort. She definitely played that role that she really was said to be. So, as I start to sort of wrap this up, I want to touch on incorporating death in general to rituals and spells. After all this mind stuff and emotional stuff and all the non-physical stuff when it comes to accepting deaths and rebirths in our lives, you may just want to work with death and incorporate it in different ways in your own witchcraft, the more fun stuff. So bones, graveyard dirt, coffin nails, dead plant material even. These are all magical tools, and there's many, many more that we can acquire to add any sort of ritual really within our lives where we work with the synopsis of death itself. It's not necessarily like, oh, something is dying. We can work with the meaning of death. When it comes to rituals and all the pretty little connections to death, obviously divination is a huge one, right? But even on a day-to-day basis, we can do little things. So if you're not going to read tarot cards or scry or try to connect to um, those who've passed on, that's kind of dabbling more into necromancy. Depending on what your diet is, even, you are eating a dead plant or animal. And deathwork can communicate to kitchen witchery really quite well if you want to pay extra attention to the food that you consume, and recognize something that, something had to die, and now you show it honor by treating it with care and nourishing yourself with it. Hopefully, I'm particularly very passionate about food. I fucking love food, so I tend to take extra care into the whole ritual of choosing my ingredients and um, cooking and then plating and then eating. And so it's a huge thing for me. Hopefully it can be for you too, because it really does coincide with quite a lot of different things within witchcraft. So, even cleaning up after things, all the little animals you may find. I think most witches naturally do this, but we have little funerals and proper burials for all things we find that die of unfortunate circumstances. I come across many, many dead animals within my life, and I always have, so I just kind of accept it as something that comes to me, and I will take it and properly bury it, have a little moment for the spirit. But you can even visit graveyards if that's something that you're not comfortable with when it comes to handling dead animals. But just in general, be respectful. If you are going to go to a graveyard, you definitely don't have to go and visit someone that you personally know. There's a lot of spirits that just love the company who have passed, if you're willing to give it. This is really a great way to connect with death on a more personal note. Um, Again, it doesn't have to be someone that you know, and it's not allowed to visit graves, at least I think, to commune and share libations with those who I'm sure are more than willing to accept your company. You can clean their graves, you can give them food offerings, flowers, wine, water, whiskey, cigarettes, whatever. Um, as you build those relationships, you'll definitely have a better grasp on what you can personally do. Another thing I kind of want to mention is feeding birds. And I know a lot of us will not even think about how the fuck are feeding birds connected to death, but birds have long been associated with being messengers from the dead. That, along with many other animals, but it usually ties back to just their folklore or physically how they behave. Really, that's sometimes how folklore even starts, is just how humans started to notice how things physically behave. Like, for example, ravens, crows, vultures. These guys are especially tied to death um, throughout long history, but they're scavengers. And to put it nicely, opportunistic eaters, but they are often seen around carcasses. And now, hundreds of years ago, this immediately made them associated with death in the afterlife because, well, here's a giant battlefield full of corpses, and now there's a million crows and ravens. And of course, that's where all the stories start. So even the influence of Odin's ravens have, those have been carried with being messengers. It's really just created waves for the lore on crows and ravens in general, and I am absolutely fucking biased when it comes to crows and ravens because I absolutely love them. And I feed my guys peanuts because it makes them really, really love me. I just want to plug in here. I have been on Witchy Work Wishes, her podcast, Charlene, and we did a three-part series on crows and ravens, which was super, super fun. I honestly don't think it was long enough, but for everyone listening, it probably was plenty long enough. That being said, you can give them other options. Like I like to give my guys blueberries or even cooked eggs sometimes. But building this relationship with um, with those who are close with death, especially within the spirit realm, things go full circle. So absolutely feed your local murder, and you might just start to notice that your relationship with death, whether it be physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, whatever it is, it's going to strengthen that cord, and you might just start to accept those harder things within your life just with a little bit more ease. And that's also not to say that honoring the transformation can come in a lot of different ways within our craft, but we can use death even as an inspiration for living. The awareness of our own mortality and the acceptance of death can inspire deeper motivations just towards life in general, toward reaching for the things we want to experience and not confining to things that don't serve us. Like I said, with living behind the same four walls all of our lives, witches are powerful and challenged to grow at every opportunity. Witch or not, we all are, but this is a podcast for witches. Um, but we are encouraged to grow our magic everywhere, and you really just have to see the challenge in things and how you can overcome it. And eventually, each step you take, it really does add to your experiences in life and your wisdom and how you pursue magic moving forward. Living authentically and purposefully, embracing death has played a huge role in shaping my witchcraft, there's no doubt. Even as a child, I realized that I liked the little darker things in life, and that was not a problem. The problem was everyone else saying that it was a problem. And the fear driven to cast death out of life is overwhelming and extremely unrealistic. It will keep you chained behind boundaries we are just meant to push. Lots of different cultures embrace death as much as they embrace birth. And I get it. Maybe working with death magic in any capacity is not for you. And that's okay. But embracing the process of death and what comes with it is necessary for growth and spiritual depth. Whatever you take away from this episode today, whether it be inspiration to light a candle for a departed one, cook their favorite meal, engage in spirit communication, or have a release ritual for parts of your life that are dying. Understand that we must grieve what will be lost, thank it, and then release it. This might have been, a heavier one today, and I absolutely think I probably went on too many tangents, but I truly invite you to consider how death and transformation play a role in your life. Death is not easy in any way, but easy is not really what we're in the business for, right? Witchcraft isn't easy. I don't think anyone who has come into the craft has had it easy, really. This is a hard road, and I think we all have our wonderful, brilliant backgrounds before we really reach witchcraft or before witchcraft reaches us. But it's something that we have already dealt with. Honestly, if you look back at your life, you can recognize all the deaths that you've dealt with, whether it be physical or not, and you can understand how you've moved past it. You can start to pick apart, how did it change my life today? How did it lead me to where I am right now? And how is that a part of my ultimate story? Um, as of now, when it comes to magic and understanding yourself on a deeper level. And I think that absolutely has to do with magic. It's not just making spells all day. So I hope even just a little part of this, even, whatever you can pick apart from this episode, it can help you understand that to face death is to just make your first step through the doorway to understanding and accepting the cycles of life. So I apologize if, this was a little bit of a hard one today, or if I went on too many tangents for you to listen to the end. But if you did, thank you for listening. Please follow my podcast if you like hearing me blab and blab about, difficult subjects, not difficult subjects. Um, Anyways, have a good day, morning, or night.